There's something happening right now as your eyes move across these lines that most men will never admit to themselves, and that's exactly why it destroys them. Millions of men are currently living inside relationships that are quietly breaking them apart, and they don't even realize they're bleeding. They believe they're doing the right thing, being devoted partners, loyal husbands, solid men. But beneath that illusion, they're being dismantled by a form of violence so subtle it leaves no visible trace. And by the time they finally understand what's going on, the damage is already irreversible. And what comes next will feel disturbingly familiar. You'll see why in a moment. Today, I'm pulling the curtain back on a realm almost nobody dares to talk about. The psychological warfare women can unleash behind closed doors, the tactics, the emotional sabotage, the slow, methodical erosion of a man's identity. Society repeats the same script over and over. Men hurt, women suffer, end of story. No nuance, no exceptions, no complexity. But stay with me, because this is where the narrative twists. What if I told you women commit just as much relational violence as men, only through different weapons? Men, when they lash out, leave marks on the skin. Women leave marks on your mind. Men bruise the body. Women fracture the spirit. And this is the part almost nobody notices. Only one of these forms of violence is punished. The other is invisible, undetectable, and socially protected. A woman can psychologically torment a man for years, decades, while the world cheers her on and calls her a saint. And in a minute you'll hear stories that make this impossible to unsee. These aren't tales of weak or pitiful men. These are high-performing, disciplined, respected men. Men who conquered careers, built families, survived hardship, and still got dismantled by someone who understood their mind better than they did. The most chilling part is that these relationships almost always begin the same way yours probably did. Warm, affectionate, nurturing. The perfect woman, the soulmate. But that sweetness is just the opening move. Let me show you how it happens. I once worked with a man in his 60s, a self-made executive who built a multi-million-dollar company from scratch, raised children, did everything by the book. He believed he'd won at life. But here's the truth he couldn't say out loud. His wife hadn't spoken a single word to him in over 3 years. 3 years of silence. They live under the same roof. They sleep in the same bed. Yet she treats him as if he's a ghost haunting the home he spent his entire life paying for. He only steps out of his room when she's gone. He buys his own food, eats alone, moves through his house like an intruder. And the most disturbing part, it didn't start this way. At first, she simply didn't like his friends. They're a bad influence. They don't respect me. It's them or me. So he chose her, because that's what good husbands do, right? Then she targeted his hobbies. Fishing, immature, golf, selfish, time with family, better spent at home. So he quit those too. Then came the family purge. Your brother is toxic. Your mother hates me. We need boundaries. Before he realised it, he had no one left in his circle but her. And that's the exact moment she dropped the mask. And what she did next was worse than anything he expected. She persuaded him, right before retirement, to take out a massive mortgage and put the entire house in her name. Because that's what loving husbands do. Now he's trapped in a prison he financed himself. Leave, and he's homeless at 60. Stay, and he slowly dies inside. No sex in over 10 years. No communication for 3. A man who built an empire, reduced to hiding in his own home. This is what psychological violence looks like, and it leaves no bruises. Here's what most men never understand until it's too late. Female psychological violence is engineered to stay invisible. When a man hits a woman, the evidence is written on her skin. When a woman destroys a man emotionally, the evidence is written in his silence. She gets to play the caring wife in public while she breaks him in private. She can cry on command, look fragile, seem overwhelmed, while he looks unhinged if he ever reacts. And this dynamic is one of the deadliest traps men fall into. Now let me walk you through the weapons they use, because once you learn to recognize them, you'll never fall for them again. The first weapon is guilt manipulation. Suddenly, everything traces back to you. Her unhappiness is your fault. Her boredom is your failure. Her cheating is your responsibility. You become the perpetual fixer of problems she manufactures out of thin air. You apologize for sins you never committed. You carry shame she planted in your head. I worked with a software engineer, brilliant guy, huge income, whose wife convinced him he was a sex addict. Why? Because he wanted intimacy more than once every 30 days. She twisted psychology into a whip. You're obsessed. You only want me for my body. You need help. Now he's paying for therapy he doesn't need while she decides if and when sex happens, and he's grateful for whatever crumbs she throws his way. This is what mind control looks like in a marriage. The second weapon is isolation, executed with surgical precision. She never forbids you from seeing friends. That would expose her. Instead, she creates conflict every time you try to leave the house. Not about the outing, but about something irrelevant. Trash you forgot last week, a tone you used months ago, a chore left undone. She times these explosions perfectly so you show up late, stressed, or so exhausted you cancel. Eventually your friends fade away because you're never available. And she never had to forbid a thing. Then she floods you with love. It's you and me against the world. No one understands us like we understand each other. We don't need anyone else. It feels romantic until you realize you're now completely alone with the person dismantling you piece by piece. The third weapon is public humiliation disguised as humor. She tells stories that highlight your insecurities. She makes jokes about your failures. She brings up your flaws as if they're light-hearted anecdotes. And if you push back, you're too sensitive. You can't take a joke. You're ruining the vibe. I heard about a dinner party where a woman spent the entire evening mocking her husband. His salary, his balding hairline, even his performance in bed. The room laughed nervously while he sat there dying internally. And what options did he have? If he called her out, he'd look like the aggressor. If he left, he'd look unstable. So he endured it, quietly shrinking while everyone watched. And this is only the beginning. What comes next is even darker. The fourth weapon she uses is one most men never question, because society taught them to see it as normal. But this tactic is far from normal. It's corrosive, it's calculated, it's sex as a bargaining chip. And here's the part most men miss. Once this dynamic begins, it rarely stops. Intimacy stops being an expression of love and becomes a reward system. Behave exactly how she wants. Maybe she tosses you a little affection, push back on something. Suddenly she's not in the mood. Want to see your friends? She goes cold. Cancel your plans and center your life around her demands. Come here, baby. Before you realize it, she's conditioned you like an obedient pet. And the saddest part is, you think you're choosing it. I once worked with an entrepreneur who'd been married 15 years. In the last 3, he hadn't touched his wife once. Not because he lacked the desire, but because she engineered an obstacle course no human could pass. Lose 20 pounds, make more money, be home earlier, spend more time with the family, be more spontaneous, but also plan better dates. And here's the twist. The point was never intimacy. It was control. She dangled the promise of sex like a leash, tightening it every time he tried to reclaim a piece of himself. The fifth weapon is financial domination through comparison. A strategy so subtle, It bypasses logic and hits you right in the masculine instinct to provide. She never needs your passwords. She doesn't have to touch your accounts. All she needs is a well-timed comparison. Sarah's husband bought her a Tesla. My sister's family vacations in Europe every summer. I guess I'm just not worth a nice ring. Suddenly you're working longer hours, hustling harder, sacrificing sleep and sanity to fund a lifestyle she feels entitled to. And here's the trap. If you can't afford it, you're a failure. If you work too much to afford it, you're neglectful. Every path leads to guilt, because winning was never part of the game. The sixth weapon is the deadliest, the children. This is her nuclear option. You'll never see the kids again. I'll tell them what you really are. They'll grow up knowing you didn't love them enough to stay. She knows the system doesn't favour fathers. She knows you'll crawl through hell to remain in your children's lives. She twists that love into a chain you can't break. I spoke to a contractor whose wife admitted it openly. I can treat you however I want. If you leave, I take the house, the kids, and half your income for 15 years, so shut up. And the tragic part? She's right. The legal system built safeguards against abusive men, but nobody built safeguards against abusive women. So the system itself becomes her 11th weapon, another tool to keep you pinned in place. And this is only where the nightmare begins. This 7th weapon is gaslighting, the slow demolition of your ability to trust your own mind. I never said that. You imagined it. You're being dramatic. That didn't happen. Over time, the ground under you starts to shake. You question your memory, your perceptions, your sanity. She rewrites history with confidence and emotional precision, and because women are often more verbally agile, her version of events starts to feel more real than your own. That cruel thing she said last week, it never happened. The promise she broke, you misunderstood. The boundary you set, you're controlling. And eventually the most dangerous shift happens. You begin wondering whether she's right. Maybe you are too sensitive. Maybe you are controlling. Maybe you are the problem. This is the moment she owns your mind. The 8th weapon is what I call emotional terrorism. She weaponizes her breakdowns to hold you hostage. If you try to leave, she threatens to harm herself. If you disagree, she spirals into hysterics. If you establish a boundary, she collapses into panic. Now her emotional stability is your full-time responsibility. You tread lightly. You walk on eggshells. Your life becomes an endless attempt to prevent the next meltdown. I worked with a doctor whose wife had panic attacks. Real, intense panic attacks. Every time he attempted to attend a professional conference. But magically, they only happened when he tried to grow independently. 5 years without one conference. 5 years of career stagnation. 5 years of managing crises that conveniently aligned with her fears of losing control. And the world sees her as anxious, never manipulative. This weapon is almost impossible to expose. The 9th weapon is the victim flip, one of the most advanced forms of psychological manipulation. She provokes you relentlessly for hours, days, weeks, poking, criticizing, mocking, pushing you toward the edge, until finally you snap. You raise your voice, you slam a door, maybe you punch a wall, and in that instant she transforms into the injured party. She now has proof you're the abuser. Your reaction becomes the entire story. Everything she did to push you there evaporates. She may even call the police, and you already know who they'll believe. Spoiler, not you. The 10th weapon is the most addictive. Intermittent reinforcement. This is behavioral science's most potent formula for creating psychological addiction. Some days she's wonderful. The woman you fell in love with, affectionate, warm, sexual, supportive. But only occasionally, just enough to give you hope, just enough to keep you trying, just enough to make you think the nightmare is temporary. Then she pulls it away again, and the contrast breaks you. Your brain becomes chemically dependent on the tiny rare highs she provides. One good day keeps you trapped through months of misery. You convince yourself she's changing. You tell yourself she's healing. You cling to the illusion that things are improving, but it's not improvement, it's a strategy, and it's working exactly as intended. Now we come to a weapon even more twisted, one most men don't notice until they're already trapped: medical manipulation. She suddenly develops symptoms that appear only when you try to assert independence. You want to see your parents, she gets a migraine, you're invited out by friends. She suddenly feels sick. You suggest she re-enters the workforce. Her back gives out. The symptoms feel real to her, and that's what makes this tactic so hard to decode. They're psychosomatic, created by her subconscious as a way to maintain control. You become her nurse, her caretaker, her on-call emotional support. And how can a good man leave someone who's suffering? But watch closely. That bad back never stops her from going shopping. That migraine disappears when her friends invite her somewhere fun. That sudden nausea never strikes when she wants to do something for herself. Yet the moment you point out the pattern, she calls you cruel, heartless, uncaring. And that's exactly how she keeps you trapped. There's another weapon most men never see coming, because it hides behind the language of purity, morality, and higher purpose. It's spiritual manipulation, and when she uses it, she elevates herself into a divine judge while lowering you into a sinner in need of correction. God wants you to be a better husband. The universe is telling me you need to change. My intuition says you're lying. With phrases like these, she transforms herself into the enlightened one, the chosen one, the one with direct access to cosmic truth. Meanwhile, your feelings, your needs, your worries, all of it becomes low vibrational, toxic, unawakened. She casts herself as the guide, and you as the broken student desperate for her approval. And this tactic becomes far more dangerous when society plays along, which it does every single time. Try telling someone your wife is abusing you. Just try it. Watch their expression. They assume you're exaggerating or weak or deflecting blame. Some will even suspect you're the abuser trying to flip the story. Men's shelters? Practically non-existent. Support groups? Nearly impossible to find. The entire infrastructure of help was built for one category of victim only: women. And because of that blind spot, abusive women slip through every crack in the system. I know a business owner who finally worked up the courage to report the abuse he'd endured for years. She had hit him, hurled objects at him, smashed his belongings, but when he called the police, they laughed in his face, literally laughed. What do you want us to do? Arrest your wife? Be a man. Then one day she called the police, after he grabbed her wrist to stop her from smashing a lamp over his head. He had the defensive wounds, she had none, and he was the one who spent the night in jail. This is the reality men live in, and it only gets darker the deeper you look. The mental health system isn't much better. Couples therapy becomes a stage where she performs her victimhood with professional skill. She charms the therapist. She cries at the right moments. She paints herself as wounded and you as the controlling partner. Suddenly, the entire session revolves around your anger issues and your lack of empathy. Individual therapy? Just as hopeless. Try finding a therapist who recognizes male victims of female abuse. Most were trained with a single lens: men harm, women suffer. Full stop. So when you try to explain your situation, you're met with confusion, disbelief, or subtle blame, all while your reality continues to crumble. So what do you do when you recognize yourself in this nightmare? First, and this is crucial, Understand that none of this is your fault. You're not weak. You're not insane. You're being targeted by someone who understands psychological warfare better than you do. The fog in your mind, the confusion, the self-doubt, the exhaustion isn't stupidity. It's the result of long-term emotional torture. And acknowledging this is the first step toward breaking the spell. Second, document everything, every threat, every incident, every meltdown, every act of manipulation. Not because anyone will believe you right away or they won't, but because you need a record to keep yourself anchored in reality when she tries to rewrite it. Write it down. Email it to yourself. Keep a trail she can't erase or distort. Third, rebuild your support system quietly. She isolated you because isolation makes control effortless. Other people bring clarity, perspective, reminders of who you used to be. Reconnect with old friends. Build new ones she doesn't know about. You need voices that aren't hers. Voices that can remind you you're not crazy, you're not alone, and you're not the man she described. Fourth, secure your finances in silence. Open a bank account she doesn't know exists. Put money aside, track your assets. Prepare for the inevitable battle, even if you're hoping it never comes. Because once she senses you pulling away, she will try to destroy you financially, and you need to be ready for that strike. Fifth, accept a truth that terrifies most men. Leaving might cost you everything. Your house, your savings, your reputation, even your children. She will smear you publicly. She will twist the narrative. She will weaponize your kids against you if she can. She will take everything the system allows her to take. But staying means sacrificing the only thing you truly own, yourself. And that's the one loss you cannot afford. Here's the brutal truth most men never want to hear. The woman you think you love does not exist. She was a performance, a curated persona designed to hook you emotionally before the real version emerged. The tenderness, the sweetness, the rare moments of affection. Those were not the relationship. Those were the bait. The abuse is the reality. Right now, some of you are thinking, this isn't me. My situation is different. She's not that bad. That's exactly what every abused man thinks. I thought it too. Every man does. Right up until he finds himself hiding in his own home, afraid to speak, afraid to breathe, tiptoeing around a woman who once claimed to love him. Others are thinking, but I still love her. Maybe I can fix this. But you can't repair someone who doesn't believe they're broken. In her mind, everything is working perfectly. For her, she has full control. You obey. You walk on eggshells. You apologize. You adapt. You suffer. And if you're unhappy, that's simply proof you're not trying hard enough. The only way to win this game is to stop playing entirely. But to do that, you must first swallow a truth most men choke on. Admitting you're being abused by a woman feels like admitting failure. Your pride wants you to stay. Your ego wants to pretend you're strong. Your masculinity whispers that leaving makes you weak. But the opposite is true. Your pride is killing you. Your ego is chaining you in place. Your need to appear strong is the very thing making you vulnerable. I know this message cuts deep. I know it clashes with everything society taught you about women, love, relationships, and manhood. But someone needs to speak this truth aloud. Women are just as capable of cruelty as men. They simply hide it better. They use moral framing, social advantage, and psychological precision instead of fists. And the wounds they inflict don't fade. They echo. If you're in this situation, hear me clearly. You are not alone. Millions of men are suffering quietly, believing they're the only ones. Believing their weakness put them here. Believing their love was the mistake. None of that is true. You weren't weak for loving her. You weren't stupid for trusting her. You weren't blind. You were manipulated by someone who knows exactly how to twist a man's strengths into weaknesses. Recognizing this isn't defeat. It's the beginning of freedom. At some point, you have to ask yourself a question that most men avoid until it's too late. How much more of your life are you willing to hand over to someone who only sees you as a resource to drain? How many more years will you spend tiptoeing around your own home like a stranger? How much more of your identity are you willing to sacrifice to appease a woman who will never, ever be satisfied? You only get one life, one shot, and right now, you're wasting it shackled to someone who doesn't love you, only the control she has over you. This is not a relationship, it's captivity. And somewhere inside, in the quiet moments when you let yourself think, you already know that. The real question is what you're actually going to do about it. Most men will do nothing. They'll read words like these, feel that spark of recognition, feel the anger rise for a moment, and then they'll slip right back into the cage they've been living in. Not because they want to stay, but because escaping is terrifying. Rebuilding from nothing is overwhelming, and the mind whispers lies to keep you still. Maybe it's not that bad. Maybe tomorrow she'll change. Maybe this time things will improve, but they won't. Tomorrow will mirror today. The next day will mirror tomorrow. Every day will blur into the next until you become that 60-year-old man sitting alone in his bedroom, eating dinner in silence, wondering when exactly his life was taken from him. And that future is waiting for anyone who keeps delaying the moment of truth. But a small number of men, a rare few, will feel something different right now. Clarity, recognition, the sudden realization that they're not insane, they're not isolated, and they're not powerless. Those men will start to plan, quietly, carefully. They'll begin the most difficult, most painful, but most liberating journey of their lives, reclaiming themselves. And here's the part most people don't tell you. Escape will cost you. You'll lose things you thought were permanent. You'll lose things you believed defined you. You may lose money, comfort, social approval, even relationships you hoped would survive. But in exchange, you gain the one thing that's worth more than everything else: yourself, your sanity, your peace, your freedom. The choice is brutally simple. Stay in hell with the devil you know, or risk everything for the possibility of a life where you can breathe again. Just remember this. Every day you stay is a day you can never reclaim. Every day you tolerate psychological abuse is a day you choose bondage over sovereignty. And one day, sooner than you think, you'll run out of days. That's the loop most men never escape. But you still can. Stop letting her twist your mind into believing you're the problem. Stop letting society gaslight you into silence. Stop letting fear paralyze you in a life that's destroying you. You deserve more than survival. You deserve peace in your own home. You deserve respect that isn't conditional. You deserve love that doesn't operate like a leverage system. And you will never have any of that as long as you stay with someone who interprets your suffering as her advantage. Time is moving. Your life is thinning out. And she is counting on one thing: that you remain too frightened, too exhausted, too spiritually dead to walk away. Her power depends on your paralysis. Prove her wrong. Prove to yourself that the man you used to be is still in there, buried under years of manipulation and silence. Prove that you can still choose yourself. And when you do, when you take that first step out of the prison she built, the world won't end. Something else will. The version of you she convinced you to become. Thank you for listening.